Our accidental environmentalist Julia Grieve is joining me with ways to cut back on textile waste and stretch your threads from one season to the next. So if you want to join in and show your winter cast off some new love, here's what you're going to need. Grab a sweater, some scissors, a needle and thread, and optional, but fabric glue if you've got it. Julia, this is such a great idea. I can't wait to see what you have for us.
Thanks, Trace. Welcome to my kitchen. So fun. But you know what? Really, lately, I have been like so many of us, spending a lot of time on social media, and I have become absolutely obsessed with the one shoulder trend that we are seeing everywhere, from sweaters to dresses. But you know what it was, Tracy? It was this image of Gwyneth Paltrow that just got me. I was like, I have to do this. So I washed my hair, poured a martini, and made a sweater.
It's like you looking in a mirror. Twinsies, like total twinning with Gwyneth. Amazing.
Oh, that's so funny. But you know what? What I want to show you today is how we can take an old basic sweater that you've got just sitting in the closet and turn it into a cutting edge, off-shoulder designer, work of art. Like my friend here, who, just so you know, scared me this morning when I came down into the kitchen. So what you're going to need to start is obviously a sweater. So your first measurement will be from your underarm. You're going to measure right up to the top corner so we can make that asymmetrical cut. So all you're going to do there is you're just going to use sort of a tape measure from the underarm right up and go across like that. And we're just going to make a line. Now, I have picked a sweater to do this with because when you're working with wool, it is much easier. It's much more forgiving. You could do it in a blouse, but you need to be able to sew properly. So when you use a wool sweater, when it's finished, it just has a real polished look to it.
Now, what about the knit of the sweater? Are you looking for something that's got a smaller knit? Do you want something that's a little bit more chunky? What works best?
Great question, Tracy. Great question. You can use a thick knit, but it's just a little chunkier and a little harder to sew back together again. What you really want to use is a thinner knit. They will work. It'll work nicely that way. And again, it's just easier to sew. So what you're going to do here is I'm cutting across the top to create that angle. You will cut through the top, the front and the back of your sweater at the same time. And just cut it off like that. You can see, Trace, that this is starting to take shape. I've got this great asymmetrical look to my sweater. But you can also see there's a lot of fabric left over. It's too big. So what you want to do is just hold it to your body and measure how much you want to take off. Again, not high tech here. This much, that much. Just make a little measurement, put a pin in it, and then you will just cut that off. So I'm going to say it's about into there is where I want to cut it. And you're just going to cut straight up, and we're going to just get rid of that piece of fabric. Again, you'll cut through front and back together. Don't worry, again, we do not have to have straight lines at this point because wool, as I said, is very forgiving when we want to try and put this back together. So you'll cut that off, and then we move to the sewing phase. So we've got that. Now we got to attach these seams back together. So all you have to do is turn it inside out, and you can sew by hand or with a machine. My one tip is if you're going to sew by hand, here's your needle and thread. See, I've learned a lot of things. So if you're going to sew by hand, just make sure the stitches are not too far apart. Otherwise, you'll end up getting little gaps in your sewing. So you would just continue to sew right up along the seam until you get right back to the top. And then that is what you've got. So now, next step, magic of television. I have another one done here. We are going to want to tidy up the top of the sweater. This, Tracy, is where the fun and fabric glue comes in. You can for sure sew this front seam. The only problem is you're going to have to sew really straight. And I'm not so good at that. That's not my strength.
That is not my strength either, honey.
So again, we'll just use fabric glue and it works really well. So we'll fold over by about, an inch, and then all we do is we just start to glue it along the seam and we just push it down as it goes in. Really easy. And that because you're not having any stitches, it will really have a flat and really clean finish line. Okay, so now this is the last tip, and this is what takes this sweater from a nice off shoulder to a designer piece. What we're going to do on my friend over here is the last bit is we are going to add a little gather to the shoulder. So you will pull the shoulder up, come up to the neck here, and if you can see, we're getting a little bit of draping happening. And what that does is it creates the drape, which is so stylish. But Tracy, what it really does is it creates, you're holding the other side up. So you've got a little security on that side. You can attach a brooch to that. You could do a seam there, just a needle and thread. Whatever you need to do to hold it there, it'll just hold the sweater together, give you that drape. Then, you and me and Gwyneth, we can all have drinks to it.
Listen, I will have a drink to that. That is a fantastic project and really helps us to use some of our winter gear. So Julia, thank you for